Hello everyone, this is David, and tonight's movie that we watched is Bigfoot, The Lost Coast Tapes. Now, this is the first movie of this type that we have addressed thus far. We are dealing with a cryptid animal, which I'm trying to think if we've dealt with any of those before. I guess a couple of our animal attack ones would count. But also, this is a found footage movie, so this is a little different than the normal horror movies I've been or monster movies, as it were, that I've been looking into lately. This is the first found footage movie we're doing, and probably not going to be the last. I'm not going to be going off on doing a large group of found footage movies in a row or anything, but just this is a movie I've been interested in seeing, and I heard some interesting, albeit strange, things about it, so I want to check it out. And it pans out about as well as most found footage movies are. And if you don't know, we'll give you a couple little informative things about found footage. Now, first of all, the concept behind it started in the late 90s with the Blair Witch Project, although there was a couple movies before that. The Last Broadcast, I believe, came out a little bit before that, which was a group of people looking for the Jersey Devil that mysteriously disappeared. But that was very hard to obtain because that was back before internet movies were really popular, and it didn't come out in the theaters. So if it wasn't in your local video store, which it really wasn't, you weren't going to be able to see it. You'd have to somehow find out about it via word of mouth and then somehow see it. Very tricky back then. But Blair Witch was the first really big found footage movie, and it touted itself as being actual events or based on actual footage that was recovered, and that has since come up. We all know that's not true. And nowadays, found footage movies, they might try to sell you on that, but at the same time, they're it's not real. I mean, Paranormal Activity has basically been coming out every October for the last 4 or 5 years now, and no sign of stopping there with that story. But that's the most two of the most well-known ones are Blair Witch and Paranormal Activity. Well, this is a recent 2012, last couple of years. So it's a little newer than we usually do, but whatever. It's all good. And it is a found footage movie about Bigfoot. So naturally, there's going to be a lot of running around in the woods at night, but not all of it is running around in the woods at night. So let's get started with it. Well, let's talk about Bigfoot a little bit. So there's some things you need to know going into this about Bigfoot. And the idea behind him, if you don't know, he's one of the most popular cryptids in existence, so everyone, I think, has a cursory knowledge, but we'll just go over this just to make sure. Bigfoot is alleged to be a 8 to 9 foot tall primate sort of creature that frequents various wooded areas around America. And I say that it used to just be sighted in the Pacific Northwest, but in the last 20 years or so, sightings have kind of gone up all over the place. And it turns out he's always been sighted all over the place. It's just no one really cared to report it. It's kind of weird like that. So that's interesting. So he's allegedly this primate that's running around, occasionally getting sighted. And debunkers will say there's no real hard evidence. And for what it's worth, thus far, there's not been any compelling evidence submitted of his existence other than dermal tracks and some few hair samples that were inconclusive. But again, for anything to be conclusive, you need an actual body, I would think, or at the very least some body part, a head, an arm, something significant to suggest that there is a new species of creature running around, or I guess an old species, as it were. But this film doesn't just delve into the scientific Bigfoot. I mean, it's a horror movie after all. Bigfoot isn't known for rampaging around the countryside and killing people, although mysterious disappearances happen. Not saying it's Bigfoot, just saying who knows what happens in the woods, right? But there's a very spiritual side to Bigfoot as well. The native people of America, those that were in the areas that he frequents, believe he is a spirit walker of sorts. It's sort of like he's a half spirit. He is like a man because he walks like a man, but he is also like an animal, so he's in the spirit world at the same time. Now, I'm probably not getting that 100% correct. I did not have a native upbringing, nor am I know anyone that's like really hardcore that way. Although I do have a couple friends that were raised in that fashion, but it does like they're from this area in New England, which we're not exactly big on having Sasquatch around here, so their legends are pretty different. That being said, they believe he's a spiritual creature, as much as a flesh and blood creature. So that's explored a little bit in this. So let's get into this movie. So this guy, Sean Reynolds, is this film producer slash like reality TV kind of Destination Truth kind of character. And he's investigating this guy, Drybeck, who allegedly has the body of a Bigfoot and evidence of their existence. And he gets his team together, and there's Coleman, Conway, and Lancaster. They all get together. They go out there. And Lancaster is very timid. He's like this nerdy-looking guy. And they originally were trying to get this guy Curtis to go with them. But as it turns out, Curtis doesn't want to go out into the woods to look into Bigfoot. Kurt also happens to be that Curtis is a black guy, and he's like, "Look, I go out into the woods, bunch of white guys out there. Guess who's gonna die first? It's gonna be me." And it's kind of funny that he just calls that right out. He's like, "No, we don't go out in the woods. No, we don't do that." So I thought that was kind of amusing that he knows where this is going, and or at least in theory, and doesn't want to have anything to do with it. So you get this guy Lancaster, who doesn't know what's going on. He's kind of like a fanboy for all things weird and unusual, and totally buys into all this stuff, which leads him to getting freaked out later. But they go out there. They meet up with Drybeck. He makes them wear hoods, drives them out to his compound out in the middle of the woods. They have an electric fence that runs around the whole place to keep things out, and set them up. And they go to bed that night. Well, they don't go to bed that night, but they have dinner. And Drybeck turns on the generator, turns on the thing, and they start doing an interview with Drybeck. And he's telling them about Bigfoot and what's going on, how they've been getting attacked by things, and how shit's been going on. And the guy, like, Reynolds just doesn't buy it. He's a classic debunker. He obviously needs the evidence for it to be true, which is fair, but he likes to go about and assumes that this guy is making it up, as opposed to bothering to look at the evidence that he doesn't have on hand. Okay, fair enough. So, later that night, there's noises, and the power goes out, and they end up back in the house, and you see a shape move across the window, and there's like noises against the walls, and nothing comes in to the house, but you hear a lot of stuff going on outside of it. And there's like I said, a shape moves by. It's uncertain as to what's going on. And the next day, they go out. Well, they go out that night and find that there's like a tree has been like thrown onto the generator wire, shorting it out. So that's a problem. And yeah, so then they go to bed, and he's like, "I can't fix it tonight." And then they all go to bed. And they wake up the next day, and Drybeck just drives off immediately, like as they're waking up. You don't find out why till later. And they go investigating. They find scratches. They find urine on the house. They find some hair. All that stuff. Not particularly convincing Reynolds. Totally convincing Lancaster, though. So that's interesting. They're going around. They're kind of trying to do the investigation. And they're walking around in the woods looking for stuff. They find some footprints down by this river. They find a guy. They find a person's footprints, and then like fakey, almost Bigfoot footprints. But they look fake to me. But I think they're supposed to be authentic in universe. Oh, excuse me a second. Oh, uh, I'm not entirely certain if they're supposed to be fake or real. They looked pretty fake to me, but who knows? That being said, they're traveling around and they find what looks like a nest in the woods. And at this point, Lancaster freaks out and he doesn't want to do this anymore. He starts heading back to camp. But in that exchange, the camera pans over to him and then back. And when it does that, for a brief second, you see a pair of glowing red eyes. Both times. Just watching. Just watching from the woods. Sign of things to come, perhaps, because the Sasquatches in this do not have red eyes. And leaves some interesting things to... some interesting questions later on. So they go back to the camp, and Lancaster leaves, and he takes the keys, and he's like, look, I'll take the keys, I'll drive the van back, pick you guys up, and we'll get the fuck out of here, basically. That's what Reynolds convinces him to do. And meanwhile, they're wandering around, they're looking into stuff, and Lancaster never comes back. Well, that night, night falls, and that night, Conway is doing a ritual, as she is a pagan, and basically like doing like a cleansing ritual, if you will, to ward away evil spirits, bad mojo, and whatnot. Something grabs her and drags her through the woods, and they find Drybeck is back, and they get Conway. You notice, like, from the camera that's like one of those cameras that goes out in front of you and views your face. You notice that there was a Sasquatch behind her, and it grabbed her and ran off with her. It didn't get very far. She managed to get away. She got hurt. They bring her back to the cabin. Reynolds is freaking out. He's yelling at Drybeck because he's accusing basically Drybeck of setting all this up and hurting her and grabbing her and everything. And Drybeck's like, no. And she's like, Drybeck couldn't do that because he's like this old guy. He couldn't like lift me up. And I was like, it was a big thing that picked me up. And Drybeck's not a very big guy. So Reynolds is like all pissed off. He still thinks something's going on. He thinks it's like LaRoche, who's this other guy that was working with Drybeck. Turns out LaRoche got all messed up by something in the out in the woods. That Drybeck found him the next morning. That's why he left. He was trying to get him to the hospital. Turns out all the roads are blocked. So they set him all up, and the next day, basically, Drybeck convinces Reynolds and Coleman, who's the other cameraman, to go with him to go see the body, to get out of basically to go check it out, because he pulls a thing out of a safe, which is basically a Bigfoot finger, but you don't really get to see it. It just Reynolds sees it and is like taken back by this, so they go to investigate it. Meanwhile, night falls at the camp. LaRoche mentions something about a camera. Turns out he found the camera that Reynolds made Lancaster take out. And Conway watches it. She gets horrified by what she sees as this thing basically grabs and mutilates Lancaster as he's trying to get out. You're not shown what it is, only that it grabs him. Meanwhile, back at the house, shit's going down. Lancaster gets pulled through like a window, or not Lancaster. LaRoche gets pulled through a window. There's a bright light outside. I think the power goes out. Yeah, the power goes out. Conway goes out to investigate it. Something gets her and drags her away, and then throws her back, and then the camera that she had blurs, and you see something walk in front of the camera. You see its feet, and its feet don't look like Bigfoot feet. They look like maybe something else. Something else is going on out here. Meanwhile, something happens. They get to the sea cave that Drybeck was keeping the body in. He has it in like this sealed case, sealed trunk, if you will. They never get to opening it because something else is in the cave with them. Dryback goes off to look into it. Their light goes out. Coleman thinks he bumps into Reynolds, and Reynolds is like, "No, man, I'm over here. You didn't bump into me." So they're freaking out, noticeably. They run out of the cave. Dryback's going nuts. They get back to the camp. Something grabs Dryback in the woods and impales him on a tree, which freaks them out, obviously. They don't know what could have done that. They run back to the cabin. Coleman just goes nuts. He goes out and just takes a shotgun and he's shooting at stuff. And then something really weird happens. He runs out and he's screaming, goes silent. He comes back in, drops down to the ground, and shoots himself in the face with the shotgun. Just like he saw something, and whatever it was that he saw made him lose any and all will to fight or care or even go on. Meanwhile, a bright light comes over the house, like blinding bright light, and you can't see what's out there. But Reynolds says he sees something, and it's large and is moving towards there. And he opens the door to go see what it is, and he goes, "Oh God, it's not a Bigfoot." And then he disappears. And then the camera falls to the ground, and you get, walking in front of the camera, these two cloven feet, suggesting that whatever it was that killed all these people has cloven feet, which suggests a demon of some sort, which is interesting. The Bigfoots were, in turn, trying to protect them from the demon the whole time. And my postulation is that Dryback and LaRoche killed a Bigfoot, and that caused a problem in the spirit world, and a demon was summoned because of that, or a Manitou, if you will. Bad spirit. And it killed everyone. And apparently they found their footage at some point. So that is the Lost Coast tapes, or Bigfoot, the Lost Coast tapes. It's an okay in terms of, what are they called? All of a sudden, found footage movies. Yeah, it's okay for that. I've seen worse. I've seen considerably better, but you don't really. The problem is the bait and switch. The whole, oh, we're looking for Bigfoot. Oh, but it's not Bigfoot, is it? It's this other thing that isn't Bigfoot at all. It's some sort of demon that we never really get to see. Well, that's kind of disappointing, honestly. I would like to see some more of the demon, but I mean, it's found footage. You're only going to see so much. That's kind of the idea. It's like less is more. The less you see, the more they can basically leave it up to your own mind, which will fill in the blanks and scare you more than showing you the monster, because if they showed you the monster, it'd be over and done with, and you'd be like, oh, okay, it's just a demon, whatever. But, yeah, all things said and done, it's pretty good. It's nothing special, certainly, but I'd definitely check it out if you're into this sort of thing. If you like found footage movies, you'll like this movie, probably. If you don't like found footage movies, don't watch it. I know a lot of people that can't watch them because of shaky cam or whatever. I don't remember there being too much shaky cam, but then again, I'm watching this on a computer, not on like a big screen. So, movie theater could be different than a little computer screen, but that's what it is. I didn't have any issues with it, and a lot of times I'll get headaches or whatnot from all the added effects that movies like to throw in with like shaky cam or 3D effects, whatever. But so yeah, definitely check this one out. Not a kids film. I wouldn't really suggest having kids watch any found footage movies. It'll freak them out a little too much. But other than that, like, it's okay. Definitely middle of the road when it comes to found footage. Not outstandingly bad, but not amazing. Very middle of the road. So that's all there is to say about that, I guess. All right, folks. Good night.